Our interview this morning is this Loretta Burnworth, and she is going to read a story here. She was written by her grandmother, Bessie Elder, who was, if I figure right, she'd be 128 years old now if she was still living. And so Loretta's going to read this, and then we're going to ask Loretta some questions about her early life in Whitley County.
Okay. Words from Bessie L. Keister Johnson Elder. She was born November 24th, 1888. She died December the 6th, 1986. When I was a little girl, in the winter, when we got up in the morning, we would have to build a fire in the heating stove to warm the house. We had a wood box behind the stove full of wood and kindling to start the fire. Then we built a fire in the kitchen stove to warm water, to wash our hands and face, and to cook breakfast. We had to walk at least 1 mile to school. If it was raining or snowing, we had to go to school. On Saturday, we took baths with water heated on the stove. We put the water in a wash tub. 2 or 3 of us took a bath in the same water. We wiped with a linen towel. We didn't have bath towels then. In the mornings, we had to do chores. We fed horses, cattle, hogs, and chickens. Yes, and we fed sheep and did the milking. We strained the milk in gallon crocks, set it on the floor in the cellar to keep cool. The cream then would come to the top, and we could skim off the cream and put it in a dash churn and churn it into butter. Then the milk would be buttermilk. We had our milk, butter, meat, and vegetables. We had corn ground into cornmeal. We made all of our own bread and cookies, cakes, etc. So we didn't need to go to town very often. But when we did go, we had to harness a horse, hitch it to a buggy. If the horse was out in the field, we had to go and catch the horse. We would take an ear of corn to catch the horse. When the horse came for the corn, we could catch him. It would take us a half day to go to town. In the wintertime, the roads were real muddy. No roads had gravel on them, and no cement roads either. We didn't have a telephone or a mail route, so we tried to go to town to get the mail every 2 weeks. We had no inside toilets. We had to go out to a little building called a privy, no matter how hard it was raining or how deep the snow. You had to go. We sometimes used the slop jars. No one liked to do that. When I first heard of an inside toilet, I thought that was terrible to make a stink in the house. Ha! We made all our dresses and underwear. No one ever wore a bra. We did have to buy corsets. We made corset covers. We also made the boys' overalls and shirts. We knitted mittens and sweaters. We butchered our hogs, rendered the lard, and butchered our beef, and dressed our chickens. When I was 10 years old, my dad had a friend in Missouri. He wrote us how much cheaper land was down there. So my dad sold our little 10 acres and cattle, hogs, and chickens. We had a wagon and a surrey, a 2-seated buggy. Dad covered the wagon and the surrey with hoops and canvas and made covered wagons. We loaded all our furniture in the wagon. Brother Guy was a year old, so Mother and 6 of us kids rode in the surrey. Well, sometimes one of us kids rode with Dad in the big wagon, but most of the time us older kids walked. A load of furniture was heavy and the roads were muddy. So the horses had to rest about every quarter mile and sometimes oftener. Then us older kids would walk and play. One time, Brother Herb and I chased a rabbit around some trees along the road. The rabbit must have been sick because we could almost catch it. While we were chasing the rabbit, the wagons got out of sight. They had went around the turn. That scared me, and I ran off and left Herb. So Mother turned the surrey around and went back to me. Herb was coming a-barreling. In them days, a little stream never had a bridge. Us kids had a lot of fun walking in the water. When we came to the Missouri and Mississippi River, we rode across on a ferry, drawn with ropes somehow. When we went to Missouri, we went to northern Missouri, where my Aunt Phoebe and Uncle Con lived. We stayed there one summer. Dad planted corn and farmed some. Then in the fall, he took the horses and wagon and picked corn. The corn was wormy, and the horses ate some of the wormy corn, and both horses bloated up and died. 2 real good horses. Then in the fall, Uncle Con pulled our big wagon and took us to southern Missouri, where we bought an 80-acre farm. We lived there 4 years. Dad soon got his fill there. The land was poor, and things were so far behind what they were in Indiana. Everybody went horseback because their roads were terrible. There were even stumps in the road. In the meantime, Mother got another baby, Brother DeWitt. So when Dad planned to come back to Indiana, he sent Mother and the 3-week-old baby and Brother Guy and Ralph back on the train. Then Dad, Herb, Cecil, Carl, and myself came back in the Surrey. We left the big wagon and the furniture down there. We had a small airtight stove we cooked on and kept warm by. We came back in December. We went down there in May. When we came to the Mississippi River, there was no bridge. We had to ford the river, and our Surrey wasn't very high up, and Dad was afraid the water was too deep. Besides the horses that pulled the Surrey, we had a pony with a saddle that we led behind. Well, Dad sent me across the river just to see how deep it was, and I was a little scared. We drove through St. Louis, and I rode the pony. It was then only 14 miles where we went through, and a mounted police rode along beside me and asked me a lot of questions. I felt puffed up. I was 13 or 14 years old when I saw the first automobile. I was walking home from our little town called Sleeper in Missouri. I heard a queer noise from behind me, and I looked to see what it was, and there came a wagon without any horses. It was an automobile. I never saw anything more before except a train or threshing machine not pulled by horses. Them days, trains were made to run by boiling water heated by coal. On the trains, it kept a man busy shoveling coal to keep the train running, and the same with the threshing machine.
All right, thank you, Loretta. That was an interview with her grandmother, Bessie Elder, and Loretta is her granddaughter. So now we're going to ask Loretta a few questions here. Where you lived in, you were born in that Detroit Township, right?
I was born right here in Columbia City.
Oh, Columbia City. Okay.
Linville Hospital.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about your early childhood, where you went to school and some things you remember from your early childhood.
Okay. My Grandma Elder and Grandpa Elder owned the house that we lived in on the west side of Whitley County. And we lived in that house until I was about 7, I think. And then we moved for a couple of years. My dad had stoppage of the speech, and it was hard for him to hold a job because of that. But he milked cows while we were gone those 2 years. And then when we came back to the farm again, he opened his own welding shop. He farmed, plus he opened his own welding shop, which was called Skeeter Hollow Welding Shop. And a lot of people in the county know him because he was very good. If he didn't have a part, he invented it.
He used to come around with his welder and thaw water pipes in the wintertime.
Yes.
That's why a lot of people remember him, because he'd come around and thaw the pipes, with his welder, soak up a welder at each end. So, what school did you go to?
Went to Troy. Well, let me backtrack. I went to Troy Center School. It was a 4-room school, and we had 8 grades there. And I went to various schools while we were away from the farm for those 2 years. But when we moved back, the school was being built onto when I was in the 6th grade. So I went from grade 7 to 12 at Larwell High School and graduated from there.
What were some of the businesses around your area there? I think there were some filling stations out in that area. Do you remember some of those old filling stations?
I sure do. There's one on the corner of what was then US 30, which is now Old 30, and State Road 5. And I can't remember his name, but Phyllis Snyder and her husband ran that one. At one point, my grandparents owned a filling station on Old Road 30, about a mile west of State Road 5. And I don't know how many years they ran that. My parents ran that for a couple of years too.
So there's a lot more stations in those days, wasn't there? All around the small little stations around for gas, and also they sold other things too. Did they have groceries in those little stores, or?
I think they did. I don't actually. Well, yeah, I know that Phyllis did. I know she had groceries as well as gas and.
A lot of things they had, the essentials, the cold meat and bread, and milk, and things like that you could get by on until you could get in town. Because how often did you go into Columbia City in those days?
I don't remember how often we did, but I don't remember. We had horses on the farm, and I remember riding the horses, but I only remember riding in cars to go to town. So I'm guessing we probably went once a week.
Yeah. Usually on Saturday night, wasn't it? A lot of times on Saturday, or?
It was on Saturday, right?
All right, when you and Larry first bought your first automobile, do you remember what your first automobile was?
It was a 1951 Chevy.
51 Chevy.
It belonged to his uncle. Forgotten his name now, but it belonged to his uncle, and that was his first car.
How much of that first? Do you remember what the cost of it was?
Well, Larry's parents bought it for Larry, but I'm thinking it was around $500.
$500. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a Chevy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you remember when you got electricity at your home?
No, I don't. If I remember right, it came into Whitley County somewhere around 1935, somewhere in there, and I'll tell my age too. I was born in 1939, so we always had electricity, but we did not always have an inside bathroom.
Okay, so you remember when you got your first indoor plumbing?
Yes, I do. It was wonderful not to have to carry the slop jar like Grandma talked about.
So how'd you get your water then in those days?
We had water in the house. There was a pump on the sink that you had to pump it in order to get your water to come out, but it was in the house.
So did you remember when you got your first well? So you had your own pressurized water?
No.
Yeah.
I don't.
But you had the kitchen pump there. Well, a lot of people had a kitchen pump. So, what changes have you seen that have made the biggest impact on your life here in Whitley County?
That's a good question.
You said you had electricity.
We had electricity, the television, of course. I think I was in high school before we got our first television.
Yeah. On the telephone.
We had the kind on the wall where you rang it up and your ring was 3 longs and 2 shorts or something like that. So yes, the telephone.
Everybody in the neighborhood knew when they got a ring, they know who it was for, and everybody have 8 people. You have 8 people on a party line, similar to that, and then everybody know what was going on.
That's right, and they might even be listening while you were talking.
Yeah. Okay. What would you consider the best years of your life here in Whitley County?
I enjoyed all of them. Probably the year we were married.
Yeah.
We were married in Troy Presbyterian Church by a Nazarene minister using a Methodist ceremony.
That's a little white church on the north side of the road, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was.
Very good. All right. Anything else you'd like to tell us, Loretta, about your life here in Whitley County?
We adopted our children here from Columbia City, 3 of them from Columbia City and 1 daughter from Wabash. Of course, they're all adults and grandparents now too, and we're great-grandparents as well.
All right, well, thank you, Loretta, for coming in and sharing around with your story with your grandmother, Bessie Elder, and a little of your history here in Whitley County. So thank you again, and appreciate taking your time to give us some of this information.
My pleasure.